Welcome, everybody. Welcome to this particular BITMAA North America powered webinar. BITMAA North America, as everybody know, is our alumni association in North America, and we have been regularly getting their support in terms of almost everything we at BIT Mesha expect for, whether it is Israel program or it is introduction to another universities overseas, or otherwise in terms of webinars. We had been continuously doing these webinars with the support of Surendra Chadda sir, Ravi sir earlier. Now this new board has taken up, and again Atmesh and the team Anjan Lahiri and all decided that we should start it because this is one way to start particular knowledge sharing. And I'm thankful that Ravi sir agreed to be a part of this particular webinar for this session, the first of its kind. To let you know what Raweesh sir is, Raweesh sir is a pharmacy graduate 1988-92 at BIT Meshra, and he is a pharmacist with an MBA degree and having 29 years of wide-ranging pharmaceutical industry experience in medical affairs, product management, and commercial roles with progressive responsibilities, which has spread across three different countries and two different continents. Strategic and operational leader with broad product launch, P&L and life cycle management expertise, demonstrated expertise in innovation and digital transformation of business processes. He was working with AstraZeneca, Biogen, and now currently working as a senior director medical strategy for SERB. So I would now request Ravish sir to take forward, and audience, please keep your mic muted unless you want to say something for the sake of not disturbing anybody. And whenever you had a question, the chat box is enabled, and Ravish sir may guide you if he will love to get the question in between or towards the end of the session. We will be having this session for a period of 1 hour, followed by 15-20 minutes of question answering. Over to you, Ravi sir.
First of all, thank you so much. I mean, it's such a pleasure to come back and talk to students from BIT, and it's like living vicariously, going back to our, my own college days. So thank you so much. The other thing is thank you for those very generous words. I just copied and pasted stuff that I put on LinkedIn. So it's a how you embellish things a little bit on LinkedIn, but hopefully. What I would be able to do is talk today a little bit about digital transformation. And this is a term that all of you are familiar with. So it should not be something which is very unusual to you. It's not something many of you are deeply involved with it. Today, what I want to do is bring a different perspective to digital transformation and look at digital transformation from the perspective of the transformed. So, first of all, I have to acknowledge what an amazing out of the box thinking has been on the computer science side, where they are not just transforming what's happening within computer science, which many of you or most of you are very familiar with, but now you are beginning to step into other industries and you are beginning to not just disrupt, but transform. So right now, I see this talk will be from a very pharma industry point of view, and I'm sure you will be having other speakers, other people that you'll be able to work and transform as well. So uh, the part from digital transformation, as you can see, is what I did was I struck off digital, and I want to talk about people transformation because I feel that transformation is of the people. Digital part is owned by the computer science IT department, and there are lots of other technology, but the transformation side is of the people. So that's the case that I will make. And what is it to be transformed by this rapidly changing technology? So, well, like for those of you who were joining late, my name is Raweesh Chaudhary, and I had very pleasant memories of 1988 to 92 in BIT Mesra. I currently work as a senior director of medical strategy with SERB. And I am also a part of, I've been very fortunate to be a part of the BITMA NA North America board for, Alumni Association. So let's start with some very basic things. And I will then try and assess, uh, trying to see where we can go. Number two, I don't see the screen. I don't can't see everyone because I'm in presentation mode. I can see some of you. This is a digital transformation talk. So, if you want to share some things, put it in chat and all that. I may not be able to look at it, but I can look at it later. But a good way is, thumbs up or thumbs down or anything. That's interactive session is perfectly fine. And, I've tried to put some case studies and I'll ask questions and hopefully some brave souls.
You have been muted. I'll just I request everybody not to touch the settings, please.
Okay.
Yeah.
So now, can you hear me now?
Yes, you are audible.
Okay. Okay, wonderful. So let's start with the single thing. What is the single biggest concern all the domain experts have? And when I say domain expert, I mean I kind of use the term that is used, I mean as a pharma industry professional, what is the biggest concern that a pharma industry professional has right now? That AI will take my job away, right? I mean, you have spent years getting knowledge and becoming a domain expert, and you throw this around, and now suddenly AI is coming, and it's not there yet. It hallucinates. It's not there yet, but there is a fear that AI will take my job away. Uh, I also am adjunct faculty with the pharma department, and one of the things that I keep telling the students that 2 semesters that I teach is AI is not going to take away. A domain expert who can use AI will take your job away. And therefore, the idea is that all the domain experts are under pressure to, as much as IT is trying to. Whoops, I need to, something happened and my sharing. Uh, I'll have to get, I can't share, some settings
Just a
changed.
minute, just let me see. Okay, okay.
Yeah, so let me keep talking about it till I get my ability to get my slides back. So that is a concern that AI will take the job away, and you can imagine that people who are
You can please
who
check.
are not yet. I can't share.
I
So
think
yeah,
somebody is there. It is there.
no, I can't. The share button is
1 minute.
grayed
I'll
out.
make.
Yeah,
Actually, I'll let me make you
no
the
worries.
presentation.
So meanwhile, while we're doing that, and you know what, I mean, unexpected things, handling, being agile is always a part of the whole process. Anyone have any initial thoughts or questions of what you expect to gain from this session? Like, what do you hope to get? And I'll keep that in mind as I start start talking about my session.
Please check
Yeah,
again.
okay, I'm going to tell
Yes.
that.
Now,
Uh,
yeah, go ahead, Rajan.
Digital transformation means we have some business. We are coming and making as a like in IT, using the IT, we are making as a automation, and it should proper presentation, and it should show uh good, means it should ensure the business and increase the business things, and with
Yeah.
low effort.
No, that's great. And so that is exactly right. So I'll talk a little bit about the transformation side as well. And thank you for pointing that out. So the part that I was saying was, and I'll address some of those. Thank you. Then that's a brave thing to do. And this is one thing that I teach all the students is the ability to speak up, right, and ask questions. So the part that I was trying to say is, the domain experts are right now really worried that AI will come and take my job away. And what we are trying to say is AI is not going to take your job away, but a person, a domain expert who can use AI will take your job away. So therefore, it is not enough to simply be a domain expert anymore. Now, what you have to do is you have to be a domain expert who can harness AI and move up the value chain. Okay, let's look at what is happening after this. Well, right now, a classic, in a few years, we will be not talking about that. A classic computing domain expert will not take your job away. In a few years, we will be talking about quantum computing domain expert who will take your job away. And, it is, we know that, I'm not going to tell this group about binary versus quantum computing, and we don't know where it is. But, Microsoft just talked about quantum computing. So I'm not going to get into that part of what is happening, and you can calculate simultaneous and one, and every current encryption system will be broken if they go where they are. I'm not talking about that. I will not. I mean, my expertise is not in that. My expertise or my aim is to say, well, how do we now transform ourselves as domain experts? And I'll speak from a pharma angle. How do we now transform ourselves as domain experts to keep up with that? Otherwise, people will become redundant. And therefore, that is the whole purpose of the talk. So I'll talk about some general concepts, and then I will dive a little bit deeper into some of these things. There's a lot of talk about digital disruption. You know, anyone can disrupt. Disruption is easy. Anyone can disrupt. What we have to do is, but it's not just disruption that you're trying to do, you're trying to transform. And disruption may or may not be a part of transformation. So as one of the things I would submit to some of the IT professionals here is to not just go and disrupt the business processes that they are hoping to transform, is to understand the business process and say some things are not broken. Let's not just disrupt it for the sake of disruption, but we are looking at transformation and what do we want to see the business process at? And sometimes that's a little bit of a mismatch between when here I'll talk a lot about collaboration between, because I'm a pharmacist, and because the pharma industry and the IT industry and how they are coming together, and there's a lot of friction and a lot of mismatch, and people sit there and say you're tone deaf, you don't understand, and IT teams come and say, well, you guys are still in the 19th century, so all that. So how do we work collaboratively? That's the focus a little bit of this talk. Right. So we are saying transformation of domain experts and business. That's what we want. Transformation of domain experts and business processes, not just transformation of technology. So let's take a little, just to make things interesting. Let's just take a little exercise and see what happened in the last 30 years. Right. So many of you weren't even born, and there was a phone, right? A rotary phone. And even before you go before the rotary phone, there were other things, and we'll not go that far. So when I was in BIT, we had rotary phone, and we had one rotary phone in the hostel, and you were able to go make calls and all that. That's where we were. And then pagers came in, very briefly came in, and you started moving towards text. And then, emails it kind of came in around the same time. I think 1995, around Hotmail came out, and, emails were beginning. And, now some of you, the thing that I've heard is people say, well, if you were born before, say, 2000, you're a technological immigrant because you don't understand a lot of things that are very routine. You think, phones and, emails and all that we have seen, uh, it coming through and being widely used. Before that, I mean, people who were born after 2000, and for them that's what they've always seen. So then you had the first mobile phones come in, and we were looking at I think by the time I started my role as a product manager, I was very proud owner of a mobile phone. Right. I mean, it was being adopted. It's not that they came in, it was being more widely adopted by the business. And then, of course, the laptops, which was a significant, movement from desktop. Then you had digital cameras, that came in, and then you had, you had other things that came in. You had camera phones that came in, and finally, let me make this a little smaller so that on my end, so I can see what I'm presenting. And then finally, you have one device which has email, text, can take pictures, Zoom, Teams, the calls we are on like now. You can bank on it, you can shop on it, and by the way, you can also talk on it, and you still call it a phone. Phone means sound. That's not a phone. That's absolutely not a phone alone. So the question then is, what has changed? Technology. I mean, the part that we try and think, oh, digital transformation, it's only happening in the last 5 years. No, digital transformation and all this technology transformation has been very, very rapid and has been happening, and we've already transformed. So we don't always have to project and look at what is going to happen. We have to look at what has happened and what can we learn. And what happened was, people like me who were using phones are now had to evolve at each time. And I think if I look in my basement, I still might have a digital camera somewhere. If I look, I never had a pager, and it kind of was demeaning for a professional, and you wanted a cell phone. But I might have elements which have become redundant very fast within my lifetime. So the question is, what has changed? Technology and devices have changed. For sure, we're still talking. What has not changed? That's the argument that I want to make. Our need to communicate. That has not changed. And so in the end, we're still trying to figure out how to communicate. Here, I mean, we are saying that, you can communicate with me without even speaking, or the element of phone. You can have thumbs up or thumbs down, or you can put chats in there and text based. We were still communicating. So that's the part that this is the fundamental. Many of you, if you are planning to do MBA or have done MBA, you will see that, there's a concept of need. There's a basic concept of need. Needs don't change. There are technologies or products or services that supply to the needs that change. Okay. So now let me then talk about some of the things that, as technology and changes, people's behavior change. And let me show you some of the things that changed. So let's start with writing paper memos. We used to, not for you, many of you don't even know that the paper memos, you wrote paper memos, and then you had this concept of CC, which was a carbon copy. And, by the time I got in, I wasn't writing paper memos, but I'm just saying it kind of changed. And so that CC still you find in CC, and blind copy. And blind copy was something that a third copy you copied and give it to the vice president. And so nobody knew and all that. So all that those are vestiges of the same communication tools that we had. Like, instead of writing paper memos, people were writing emails. And I think that is the single biggest digital transformation that we've had. I don't know about AI, but moving from writing to typing and sending email, that's a massive digital transformation of people, because it was adopted by people, mass. Everyone did. And so a lot of things disappeared. Making phone calls sound only. Now you have video calls, which is sound and video. Leaving a voice message. That was a thing. You left a voice message and you repeated your number twice and all that. And now, if you leave a voice message, people just think you're weird. You just say, well, don't leave a voice message, just text. Voice-based synchronous communication. That was, you had to have, and now you have voiceless communication on social media. We communicate all the time, and we have kind of figured out, okay, LinkedIn is only for professional, Facebook is for something, Instagram. So we have it positioned in our mind. Then we have time dependent communication, and now we have time independent communication. This talk itself is being recorded. And so there is that synchronous part where we are having conversations at the same time. And there is the asynchronous part where some people will watch it later and comment, and will still be communicating, but it will be independent of time. And then you have proximity based conversation. Now you have proximity independent conversation. So we don't have to be. In fact, I'm sitting in a room all alone, halfway across the world. It's daytime here. It's nighttime in India. and we are having a seamless communication. So the part that I'm not telling you anything new. I'm just trying to say that we need to recognize how people's behavior have changed, and it's the people transformation. And we'll talk about people and businesses and how to understand and how to, when you are approaching a company, and in this case a pharma company or the pharma industry, then how do you approach in such a way that you understand the big picture and also understand that there will be resistance to change, and there are teams that have to understand, and then there is technology which is actually very confusing to domain experts. I mean, it is gives a sense of powerlessness and say, well, all this thing is changing and I can't keep up with it, and somehow I need to keep up with it, so that because it is transforming what I do, so that I master. Now we'll look into some of those and I will talk about some examples. And then emotional and facial expressions are replaced by emojis. And typing, if you want to yell at someone, then you type in all caps. I mean, these are habits that are changing. Okay. So let's delve a little bit deeper into it. I mean, these were some very philosophical things. I'm sure nothing is new. The only argument that I was making is I will focus more on a pharma industry point of view, and I will more focus more on the change. And as you, some of you, many of you are are and will be pioneers in the whole digital side. So how do you keep the broader business and the need and all those things in mind uh, as you transform? Otherwise, it'll just be a lot of disruption and it may not achieve what we're trying to do. So digital transformation of a business process, I came up with, I had to make something fancy, so I came up with 3 T's: the technology, teams, and training. I mean, this is not validated. I just had to put my talk together to make it more interesting. So I thought, well, let's just talk about technology, let's talk about teams, and let's talk about training within technology and overall business process. So those are the 4 things that I will talk about, and say that how do you see all this coming at you from a pharma professional. And so this talk will be, forgive me, it will be a little bit more pharma focused, but also because I am very interested in the collaboration potential between computer science and pharma departments, and I will make a case of why that is really important. Okay, so let's start with the business processes. There are some things that I wanted to say. Number one is geography is history. In the last few years, and especially during the pandemic, it became absolutely clear that geography is history. You do not need to be present at that place for a transaction to happen. And this is the single biggest problem lots of CEOs have today, that they want people to come back to work, and they want to say, well, because they are paying for infrastructure and paying for office and fixed costs and all that. But it really, I mean, you can completely, in many cases you can completely work remotely, and there's this hybrid thing. So sooner or later we will come to that hybrid situation where we will be accepting hybrid work or complete remote work without guilt. Number two is time has become relative. So time has become relative because, like I was saying, that, number one, while we are still at the same time, point in time, it may be night in India and morning in here, but that we are still at the same point in time. But that does not mean that, through social media, through emails, through text messages, you can still communicate, but you don't have to do it synchronously. And then the third thing is it is happening really fast. It's almost like the speed of typing. And you think and you can communicate. It's so those are the 3 frames of references I want you to keep in mind as we go along. Okay, so let's then delve into technology part. let me talk about a case study, a real case study. When I was in Biogen, I worked on some things as a director of medical affairs in AstraZeneca. I built this little, I heard about next best action, and that's what happens. You're reading something, you're reading Harvard Business Review, you're reading, talking, and I'm very fortunate that I'm very close to my 1988 batch engineering group. And so we are on the same WhatsApp group. So I get to understand a lot of things which many other pharmacists are not. And that's one thing that I'll keep repeating about BIT is that you have so much cross-departmental collaboration, at least on a personal level. So I get to understand. So I probably heard next best action somewhere and say, oh, this is a great thing. And so I kind of worked on some things in AstraZeneca and built a prototype. And then, I became a strategy director in Biogen, and part of my role was to transform. And so we said, well, let's just work on a next best action. And so I'll talk about, if you aren't familiar, you may or may not be familiar with next best action. It's basically, let me describe a business process and kind of tell you what the next best action was. I'm going into something very specific, and we'll talk about other business processes. So you have people here in North America, pharma companies have what are known as medical science liaisons. These medical science liaisons are highly, they're subject matter experts. They know all the science. They're not in marketing or sales, and they are very highly respected. And part of their job is to meet with some of the key people and discuss the science. And it may or may not be in label, what's coming in, what trials to do. That's what they do. And typically, a typical pharma company will have anywhere between 10 to 40 MSLs for the entire country. So MSLs, the idea was very simple. The MSLs, some MSL goes and talks science with some healthcare professional. It's an HCP, and then time elapses, and you after say 3 months, the MSL goes back and discusses more things. And so where they left off, that's the traditional model. So the next best action that ZS proposed was say, well, MSL went and discussed something with the HCP, and meanwhile, ZS was developing an engine where you're saying, okay, let's incorporate everything that's happening. Let's incorporate, clinicaltrial.gov, more trials came in. Let's look at a conference where more information came in. Let's look at some company produced a competitive product. Let's look at, publications that came out. Let's put it all together. And then let's tell the MSL that next chat you have with the healthcare professional, you're not starting at the same place where you did left off. What you're now doing is it will tell you, we put all this information together, we have synthesized it. It's almost like AI level. And what you're now able to do is say, well, you should focus on this because since you last chatted about it, these things happened. So it is telling this is your next best action. So it was a great case study. And, it was, I think that $300,000 investment, 1 year project. It was a great case study on the face of it. Okay, so how did it do? Well, this is what ZS had promised. And ZS is a consultancy company. And, lots of consultancy companies will work with pharma. This is what they have promised, and this is what they delivered. So the question was, what happened? And by the way, when they delivered, and I'll talk about how it didn't work at all. What happened was they didn't have the success metrics in place. The simple question was, well, if you are trying to do this and get the MSLs to start a conversation from bring them and say, well, we should now talk specifically about this, all this information we have synthesized, which a person alone cannot do. The question was, did you have success metrics in place? Did you really? So the question was, then the MSLs were asked and said, okay, well, did this whole process help you? And 9 out of 10 MSLs said, no, it didn't bring me any value. But then the managers told them, no, this is a corporate project. So you can't say it didn't bring value. Please say it brought value. So then the MSL said, okay, well, yeah, this is great because we are going here. So this is great. And then ZS, which had promised, they said, well, it is bringing value. So they joined in on the same story. And then the digital director who was involved with the whole process said, oh, yeah, he wanted more money. So it was completely embellished. It was completely embellished. It was a complete failure. Now, does that mean that this whole process of next best action is not a good process? No, it is. It is a really good process in idea, but it is just that you are not delivering the success metric of saying, well, the MSL doesn't live under a rock. The MSL also gets a lot of information. The MSL also processes the MSL. So this simplified model was trying to compete with a very sophisticated MSL mind. And therefore, we have to say is, look, you were here, typically, you were just trying to replace the MSL at some point in time. So no, you have to give MSL mechanical arms. So the whole part here, the learning was, it is important to listen to the stakeholders. It is important to say, well, did it change? And say, well, put those hard metrics and say, not even start the project until you can figure out what is it that a person will do differently after 1 year of effort and all these engines that we are building, all the information we are synthesizing. Will the person do anything differently at all? So that was the big question. All right. So let's take a little bit more detail and say, what do we have right now? So let's keep on the theme of scientific engagement. So, MSLs and even the reps and other people, pharma, that's traditionally how they're working. And now they're getting to omni channels, all that will get disrupted. But typically, the scientific engagements, and we're still talking business processes. Then we'll talk about and technology and business processes. Then we'll talk about teams, and then we'll talk about training and transformation. So if you are looking at scientific engagements, right, or you're trying to classify, different key opinion leaders, and you're trying to get social media insights, or so, what are the various tools that are available right now? These are really, really sophisticated tools. I mean, if you haven't heard them, you might want to look it up. There's Monocle, Komodo, and PharmaSpectra. And right now, I have Monocle, and I can look at 15 and a half million healthcare professionals over the world. Everything, where they practice, what is their email, who are they involved with. 15 and a half million over the world. I can look 5.5 million healthcare professionals within US. I can look up and say, well, I can go to Ranchi, and I hopefully it is there. If it's not there, it'll be there. I can look up individual people if it is all digitally there. I can look up literally who they publish with, what they, who are the people they collaborate with, their prescribing habit. It all depends on what is the underlying information, but that is possible. Komodo and PharmaSpectra are two of those things as well. Then you have social media insights. So typically, there are tools like Sprinkler and Bandwatch and Meltwater, amazing tools, really good tools. These can, if I say that, and one of the things that we are working with the class that I have as part of pharma marketing, and one of the projects that I'm also working, trying to work collaboratively, is to say, well, let's talk about the insights first, and then talk about the possible collaboration and some of the things that we're trying to do. So when you talk about HCP engagements, you have to first figure out who are the key opinion leaders. So you look at these tools and they can do all kinds of analytics, and you figure out who are the most important people. And from the perspective of a medical person or perspective of a pharma person, commercial person, or you can figure out, you can build all these logistics, and you can do extremely great analysis that you can do. The insights part, say, well, okay, so now you know that these are the important people. What are you going to talk to them? You need to know a lot about them. So just because you know where they practice and how many patients they see and how important they are doesn't mean anything. What are you going to talk to them? What have they been talking? So typically, right now the MSLs would have gone, the other people would have gone, you would have seen what they published, and you kind of knew a little bit of an idea. But then, many of these people are freely chatting on social media, right? So now you can build these algorithms and, build these dashboards where you can say, or something happened and, a trial came out and, a really transformative trial came out. You can just build this algorithm and say, well, write a Boolean logic and thing, and it'll tell you, it'll filter out all the unnecessary material and tell you, here are the tweets. And these could be 30, 40, 50,000 tweets or other pieces of information, discussion, and all that. So these tools, Sprinkler, Brandwatch, and Meltwater, and there are other tools, you can build these sophisticated things. Now they are getting into AI. Um, you can get AI to say, I'm not going to read 30,000 tweets, give me the top 5 things. And they are getting really good. So this itself is part of one whole process. Now, where are companies right now? Companies are still depending on, they're not using, all of them have these tools, but they're not incorporating in business development process. They so there is a gap. So what you have is you have these tools which are not truly integrated in the business development process. So what are insights is basically telling you deep knowledge about some process or some people. So what is happening right now is the few MSLs, and I speak from medical affairs, but few MSLs have met few people at one given point in time, and what they say is taken as truth. And you massively say, oh yeah, this is what is happening. Whereas on social media, if you go, you will see that a whole bunch of information that is coming in, which is not being it's not being integrated. Now with AI, all this will be disrupted. And basically, what will happen is AI's ability to integrate all of these things together will allow people to get deep insights and in real time. So, as you look from IT professional, you have to keep in mind that the idea is not to develop these tools alone. The idea is how do you integrate these tools as an essential part to transform business processes. All right, let's take a couple of more in-depth steps. But before that, if you look from a person like me, who's not a computer scientist, who's I know more, little bit more than most other people in my role would know, but it is still very confusing as a domain expert, if I may call myself that. It is still very confusing. So let's just give you a unrelated example. So the decision first we have to make is, well, I have to buy a phone. So should I buy an iPhone or a Samsung or many other brands? For the sake of simplicity, that's the first decision. Then I have to say, okay, well, what apps within that? There are tons of apps available, right? You have Twitter or X, you have LinkedIn, you have Facebook, and you have WhatsApp, and then I think this is WeChat and Telegram. And then, of course, then you have, I just put in, you have Simpler, Sprinkler, and Brandwatch. So these are social media tools, and they can do an amazing job of doing. I mean, it'll be shocking to. I was shocked at how good these tools are, how they can pick and analyze. When things that somebody posted, it can all be analyzed and put together, and you can track. So the next level decision is, okay, well, which tool to use? Now the question is, these are all very similar, right? So should I use Twitter or LinkedIn or Facebook? Well, it depends on what you're trying to do, right? So the business process, a business, if you're trying to transform, you have to understand what is the basic purpose, what you're trying to do. So based on what you pick and choose, depends on what you're trying to solve for. Okay, so now this is a true example of an assessment that I did looking at various social media tools. And one was Brandwatch, one was Simpler, and one was Sprinkler. And then to say, well, as a domain expert, it's not even my area to be able to say which is the best tool. But the problem was that there is nobody who understands both d- domain side things and the technology which is trying to transform. So there is a need for, right now there is a collaboration, and people are going back and forth with each other. But there might be, as you are in school, I would say to step beyond your area and understand how you can collaborate with other departments, very important if you plan to transform the pharma industry later on. So this is looking at, I just created some things and said, well, intuitiveness of use, quality of data, quality of training by provider, ability to mark widgets, data sources. And so I put things together and then I rated them on my own and said, okay, well, and then I said, this tool is the best. Now, did I do a good job? Not really. I just put things together. There's a gap, and andho mein kana raja wali baat hai, or I knew a little bit more. So I suggested, and the company went with it, right? I mean, the company went with it and said, okay, well, this is the tool that we are going to use. Okay, so now, sure, we have that tool. So this is a social media tool. And now I'll say that we got to said, okay, well, out of the three tools, we are going to use this tool, and we are going to transform how insights are gained. And so now is the integration process. So we said, okay, actionable insight. So insight is basically, if you're not familiar, insight is companies say, well, I need to have deep understanding about something, which is beyond just, how these people play. So if some of you, if you're following, or will watch the India-Pakistan match tomorrow on Sunday. So there is simple things and facts and all that, who's playing what and all that. But the deep insight is Kohli kaisa khelega. I can't remember if Kohli is playing still or not. You kaun kaisa bowling karega. So you're doing these deep insights and you're trying to think and, planning and strategizing. All the insights that you get is not actionable. The question is, well, you take these insights and now the company has to figure out, isse kya action le? Nuclear button dabana hai ki nahi dabana hai? That's the action that has to be taken. So just all pieces of information and there's explosion. So where are the insights? Where can they come from? And I'm just showing a business process, and then I'll show one part which is being transformed. So right now you can get insights, deep insights in a pharma company through CRM, customer relationship management tools that, Viva, this is also part of IT. And, internally, everything that is being said and done is being put in together. I'll hasten the process a little bit. I want to make sure that I finish on time. So, and then you have external agency insights, you have traditional media monitoring, your publication, your medical information, they bring inside, brand reports come in, corporate communications come in, field insights. And then on the right-hand side, you have social media monitoring. Now, what is happening is some of these insights that you have are few and they are not that much. But social media monitoring is it when you do, you get lots of really great insights in large numbers. Now, then you have to, from that, you have to take out the actionable insight and you have to create an actionable report. And that is shared with medical leadership, commercial leadership, corporate communications, and each one says, look, this is what is happening within an organization, and you have to make these changes, and these are the things that you have to do. All right. Well, it's not just about insight. Then, from a marketing perspective, what companies have to do is they have to now say, well, we have to use this to sell more products or services. And so how do we communicate with the people that we have identified? You can do it through a multi-channel. And I'm throwing these terms because these are terms that are coming in and I'm putting high-level things. So they're multi-channel, there are lots of different things. They don't communicate with each other. You're communicating with the customer or consumer independently of each other and through different channels. It's like advertising and radio announcements and word of mouth, and they're not talking to each other. And then there is this concept of omni-channel where you're harnessing everything together and they're all talking to each other. And then, you're saying, okay, well, this person, our MSL went and talked and said this, and then this person went on this website and you pulled something together and they clicked and you had an ad there and they clicked on that. And meanwhile, they attended this conference and then they spoke at this conference. And so you're building a whole persona, you're blending physical and non-physical stuff in there. Okay, so then I'll move a little bit faster here and I'm keeping track of time as well. So you're trying to do this, but in this whole process, the business processes right now are out of sync. There is what is happening is, like I said, I mean, lots of processes, especially in the pharma industry, they are doing things the old way. And then you have to have all this technology and all these things coming in, which is completely transforming things. And now what you have to do is say, well, we need to get ahead of it. So the thing is, what we have to say is we have to figure out, okay, well, within the industry, what are things that are redundant, right? We that need to change. And what are things that don't need changing? And what are the things that we need to adapt? So all these, there is a lot of introspection that is going on, especially in my industry, figuring out, okay, well, let's not touch this, let's change this, let's completely transform this, and people have to get along with it. So in the interest of time, I will not go into all of these. I mean, I'm just showing you some business processes. You have HCP or scientific engagements, you have scientific insights, you have conferences that you're attending, all the science that you're presenting, years of trial that you're presenting, evidence generation completely changed. All the trials that you're doing used to be, there was one trial called Apple Heart, where Apple did a trial, your watch could detect atrial fibrillation. And the entire follow up was done through apps. Right now, you have people who go into the investigator and take notes and say, well, look at the data and all that. It was patients come in and follow up. It was completely done through an app. And they not only that, they recruited 400,000 patients in and completed a trial in 8 months. Extremely effective, right? So medical education, key opinion leader or digital opinion leader identification. There are lots of these tools, and we won't go into all of these. I just wanted to show. So I'd say, well, keep those bigger. All of these are being transformed. Drug discovery itself is transforming. AI will, and even otherwise, you have these tools which will look at the molecules, look at the stereochemistry, and be able to tell what are your candidates. So now a little bit more about, again, hybrid, and just to change the mindset and say, well, what happens is, if you, and I again speak from pharma industry only, and I don't plan to insinuate that I speak for all industry that is being transformed. So what happens is, sometimes you see a lot of IT companies, you're working on KOL identification tools, you're working on customer relationship management, you're working on social media tools, and each one, when they approach pharma companies, they have their own perspective, right? Whereas a pharma company sees itself as a whole bunch of people, and they have a different perspective, and someone has to put everything together and say, well, let's coordinate all of this together. Let's look at the technology that is changing. Let's look at all the various processes. Let's integrate and let's keep functioning. So just to show you, this is a slide that I made for just how complicated medical affairs alone is within a pharma company. You have tons of different departments. You have regulatory affairs, you have agencies, you have life cycle management, you have corporate communications, medical affairs leadership team, you have global, you have so there are lots of promotional regulatory affairs, there are lots of different teams. And typically what happens is all of them, they have to, my attempt to make it look like a cog. And so you change one and all of them have to keep working in unison. And right now there is just so much confusion, right? I mean, people talk to each other and there's politics and all that. And, I was hoping to ask a question. When you look at an elephant, uh, I don't know if you know how an elephant is controlled by the mahout sitting on the neck of the elephant and has a little pointed stick or little I don't even know what it's called, and it pokes the elephant in the neck and tells the elephant where to go. So typically that's where I feel that AI will come, is harness all these things together, put everything this together, and then all the strategic managers will have mechanical arms to be able to make all these different business processes work together. So at any given point in time, what I would submit is, if you are working with one department, one area, keep the bigger picture in mind. And this is I'll skip this slide. I mean, I think we are kind of running slow, so I'll just the big argument that I'll make is there is need for cross departmental collaboration and hybrid professionals. So we are saying, well, it is well recognized within my industry that, pharma professionals have to work with computer scientists and work with data scientists and then figure out what is generative AI, how is it changing everything. But it has to be one person, or they have to work in sync. If that can happen in the pharma industry, then the question is, why can it not happen in BIT Mesa right now? Different departments just to understand and work out collaborative projects. So there is a little project that we are working, we had some computer science students and some pharmacy students, and we said, well, can we build a social media tool, which is very expensive? And we say, well, can we build a social media tool, and can the pharmacy department then use the social media tool to get insights? And you can sit there and use that tool and say, well, this conference was held, what are people talking about? So there's a tremendous potential. It's still in its infancy. I just wanted to recognize that as well. Okay, so let's switch gears. So now you have the perfect technology, you have the perfect platform, but you say, okay, well, here I built you the perfect car. Do the business managers know what to do with that car, where to go? Right? So you have this tool that can do all these things, but oftentimes people are not transformed. So let's talk about teams. So the first thing that I feel that there are some skills that are required, and this now delves into the company itself, and now you're trying to transform. So let's just take IT and domain experts, whichever industry. In this case, it's pharma. Number one, we all talk about intelligence quotient, how intelligent these people are, how much they know, how smart they are, and that's fine. But I also feel that there should be an EQ, emotional quotient, which is, if you read in books on emotional intelligence, just because you know something doesn't mean you're successful. You have to have a little bit of an emotional quotient and be able to remove, emotionally charging elements and focus on what needs to be done. But then you have, especially the domain experts, have to have agility quotient. Well, they have to now figure out all these things, how they are changing rapidly, and how can we make sure that we stay on top of things and not get redundant. And then there is the digital quotient, where you say, well, how well do you understand? I mean, I am fortunate to be in constant touch with all my engineering colleagues, and therefore I can keep track of Chat GPT 4 or 5 or GRI and all these. I can do that. So I'm increasing my own digital quotient. But there is a need. I would submit that if you are in IT side, if you are working with the pharma industry, you need to understand that as well. You need to have your emotional quotient and intelligence about that, and your pharma quotient, if you will. You need to increase that as well. And then there is redundancy, and there is people are resistant to change. I'll skip some of these slides and say, people, it's not so easy. You just have a great tool and you throw it out there, and people don't want to change. So there is a little bit of redundancy, and some people are holding you back. So uh, the way to change those people is to show the value and say, look, this is how it is going to do things differently, not just show the tool, but showing them the value. And that's how, when they will start looking at changing. And then this is, I will not go into it in the interest of time. I just put it in. I can make these slides available if you are interested. It's saying, look, I mean, these are the things that are happening, what we did before 2020, and how we need to evolve, and how people are transforming. So congresses used to be conferences, you went there physically and you talked to a lot of people, listen to session. Now you have to have live and virtual teams if you're covering congresses. Some people just stay at home. Everything is on the internet now. The question then is, why can students from classes virtually attend congresses? And then now you are abreast with the latest technology development and latest development that are happening, sitting in your class. And then, of course, there are other things that each one of these are a little bit more specific on how they're changing. Okay, so let's talk about reasons for resistance to change. So just because we have this great technology, we have solved the world's problems, doesn't mean that people are going to change and organizations are going to change. And the three reasons that happen is, I don't understand it. So people, and lots of people in my space, so say, I don't really understand what the heck Chat GPT does beyond hallucinating. I understand it, I don't like it. And the third one is I don't like you. And this is true. I mean, if you work in an organization, you will say, well, that's great, but I just don't like them. So there are things that are change. We're trying to transform. There's resistance to change, and all these things are happening. So we've talked about technology, we've talked a little bit about teams, and I'll bring it home with training. And then hopefully I'll be able to finish it in 6 minutes so that we can open it up for some questions or anything that you have. All right, so you have the technology. Let's just say we did a great job with the technology. We built the car that was needed. Success metrics were all met. You have the team in place, very highly intelligent and emotional quotient and digital quotient, agility quotient. You have put the team together. But then you need to make sure that they are trained. That is the other part that, we can't just bring people who understand this and put them with technology and hope that there is transformation. So one thing that I'll borrow a little bit from transformation. This is an HR model, and it's known as the Kurt Levin model of organizational change. So they say if you want change to happen, you have to unfreeze current behavior, and then you have to introduce change, and then you have to refreeze the desired behavior. If you do not unfreeze the current behavior, then there will be no change happening. So let's just say if some people said, I'm sure when emails came in, way before many of you were born, emails came in, and everyone said, from now on, we'll all do emails. There are a lot of people who said, yeah, they'll send a few emails, but mostly they were writing paper memos. So you have to say, well, you will be dinged if you write paper memos. You're not allowed to do it. And then you say, from now on, you will only do this. And then you intervene so these are behaviors. And like I said, the transformation process is of people. So you have to unfreeze current behaviors, which means you have to also figure out that the tool and the IT related intervention that you're doing, is it unfreezing the current behavior? And you also have to make sure that you don't want to change stuff that is not broken. So just having that broader understanding of how organizations and people change, this is a model that we use. So, okay, so last few slides. So now there is a dichotomy. So we have to say we have to be agile in our thinking in some areas, and we have to be very rigid and not compromise in other areas. So when it comes to technology, the types of technology, the types of process, the types of AI, generative AI, to all these other processes, that we have to be very agile as a domain expert. We have to be very agile and keep figuring all that. But what it is trying to solve for, that we have to be absolutely rigid. Otherwise, we will get into the ZS like situation where uh, $300,000 and 1 year later, it did not change anything. So we have to say, what is the problem that I'm trying to solve? Does the technology meet that problem or not? So that's where we have to be rigid. When it comes to teams, well, we have to say, well, we have to be agile in the current expertise of people. So they may or may not know, the IT side may not know enough about pharma. The pharma side, experts may not know about evolving IT. So that we have to be agile in our thinking. But the acumen, where we want to bring people to, that we have to be rigid and say, well, we can't just expose people to technology and confuse the heck out of them. So we have to make sure that we are very rigid on that. And then the training, for training, the third T that we said, well, the training channels and processes and what we use and how we train them and how creative we have to be agile. But the business impact of the training is we have to be extremely rigid. So just to make sure that the one on the right, that defines how successful the process will be. So with that, in the last 2 minutes, what I'll do is I will just summarize some of these things. And I purposely did not go a lot into some of the IT related side and IT related things because you guys are experts at that, and I speak a little bit more from my domain side. But I would say that I wanted to do a talk with a bigger perspective and to say, well, when you approach, and it could be pharma, there's some pharma students in there, when you approach a particular area, keep in mind that there's a bigger story happening, and stay aligned to that bigger story. So the first thing is to say, well, in summary, to say, figure out what business process or people that you're trying to transform digitally. That is very, very important. See the big picture. Figure out, some of you are starting your companies and you may be very excited about a problem that you've solved, but you will run into headwinds when you try and present that and they say, okay, it's not even solving the problem that we're trying to do. And then you have to move one step and say, no, it is. Here's your problem. This is how we're solving. Don't just disrupt, innovate to transform. Really important. The idea is not to break down everything. You have to transform. So you have to innovate to transform. Digital transformation is transformation of people, not just technology. So that is very important. The transformation part is transformation of people. So leverage insiders, leverage people, or in your case, leverage. If you're trying to do something that you hope to transform the pharma industry and you're in IT, talk to pharma people and figure out how to really transform. Recognize and address barriers to change. So there, people don't want to change. People really don't want to change. Sometimes they do on their own as well, but most people don't like to change. So you understand the barriers. Bring startup culture in organizations, work cross-functional team, and startup culture. Some of you are already doing startups. Work in startups. Figure collaborative, and I keep talking about I feel strongly about the collaboration between IT and computer science and pharma department, because that's the collaboration that's happening 30 years later in companies that I am in, where we are working really closely. So therefore, from BIT part, find ways to collaborate cross-departmentally, and then remember all 3 T's, which is technology, teams, and training, and not just technology alone. So with that, let me stop there. I think I went a minute over, but I wanted to stop and see if anyone has questions, things that I did not address, and go from there.
Raweesh, at the start of the session, first of all, let me tell you that it was a wonderful session, very easily explainable, and definitely it went well. The questions which has been posed on by Harshit is, where are the biggest gap in digital transformation within the pharmaceutical industry today, particularly for startup or new entrants?
Yeah, so let me, before I say where are the biggest problems, let me talk about where are the biggest opportunities. The biggest opportunity is, if you are a startup, you have to realize that there are lots of processes which are very inefficient, right? And with AI, with other things, you can quickly transform some of these things and at least make it much cheaper. So that's the real. So you have to look business process by business process. So there's a little bit of background noise. If I can ask people to turn off there. So the the challenge will be two. One is to say, as a startup, what are you trying to transform? What business? If you are going to ask for money from a company, you have to show either there's a cost value proposition, right? So say, here's the value that I'm bringing. This is what we are changing. So either you show that there's a real value that you're bringing, and so you have to now increase your budget and pay for that value, which you can get, or you say, well, we're not bringing extra value, but I'm going to do it much cheaper. Right. So then you are basically saying, well, we'll do it much cheaper. And so I think just understanding the biggest gap would be to, at C level, is to tell them, okay, well, here's what we are trying to change. Here's how it'll either save you money or it'll bring you value. The other big transformation challenge is not your problem as a startup, is the company's problem, where people don't want to change. Just because you have a great value or cost, people will not want to change. That's the company has to do. So getting the C level or the CEOs and other behind you, because you can have a great thing, but if they don't put their weight behind you, it will die. So those are some of the big challenges. Oh, you're on mute, sir.
Yeah, it's quite relevant, definitely.
Yeah.
Yes, I can see Ratan asking something. Yeah, Ratan, please go ahead.
So, hi everyone. Raweesh sir, thank you very much. I am also from a pharmaceutical background, and I'm there from training department. So thank you very much for recognizing the department at least. So So training plays a very important role. So I will take up two things, not just to people understand. I will tell you that on two things. The first thing is there is a tool where people do report, okay, in sales, in pharmaceutical. So I have been there with a company called Dr. Reddy's once upon a time, and we were starting that part, launching that tool, and making people to understand that on the tool how they have to report. Now, before that, you would have seen that people used to send their expenses and reports by paperworks, and they used to courier that to the you know the head office. So, and it would have been taken so much of time of dispatch, receiving that, checking on those things, and changing those things, and then expenses are cleared out. But later on, people resisted on on those aspects. There are two things. One was the transformation from paper visual aids to a technological tabs. So where people they resisted is the first thing, the operational, how to use those tabs. So people resisted in the field itself. People left companies. So there are various companies I have worked for, and people do they changed because they didn't wanted to change that their habit of holding a booklet and talking to the KOL or the HCPs. That was the first thing. Secondly, they resisted that through tab their positions or their life position will be tracked down. Okay, that's what they were resisting them, that it is not possible. But now majority of the pharma companies, I do believe, in India, they operate with different tools like Salesforce, CBO, where they not only track down the customer base, which also helps in them maintaining in the customer relationship, each and every degrees, their timing of visit, their addresses, okay, how many times has to be visited, how many times they have visited, okay. At the same time, from that tools, business leaders are getting inputs to create their marketing strategies. So that is a huge transformation which happens in different tools. And one more thing, recently I visited a conference, okay, in Gurgaon. So Salesforce is a company which has came for an AI which is called Salesforce converted into Agent Force. Their AI force is now called as Agent Force. So there is a guy called the managing director of a company called BITMAA, which is in fashion industry. You all might be knowing BITMAA from Punjab. So these people are using those tools, AI tools, to increase the customer relationship management. How they're managing with the help of AI was very insightful, and it was very, so what I thought, because I was the only person in that whole crowd who is from pharma. Okay. And I felt that pharma industry should adopt those things into their part. Okay, so increase their relationship with their customers, the needs, to identify the needs of the patients or HCPs and providing them. Okay.
Yeah, wonderful. And I'll also put, so I completely agree with everything. And also to mention that this is just one part of this is then you have drug development, you have interaction with there are lots of different business processes to say, look, all of them are being transformed. They're completely transformed. And so from a domain expert, it just becomes very uh, overwhelming and a little bit scary to figure out. I mean, this is the way pharma, and so going back to the previous question, and I'll address some questions in the chat as well. Going back to the previous question, what is the biggest opportunity? That's your biggest opportunity. You see how archaic pharma is, right? A lot of things, and now pharma is just jumping from crawling to flying, and AI will come in. So therein lies the opportunity. Either you save money, or you find out little opportunities, but keep the bigger perks in the say, well, what are we trying to change? So one other thing that I'll see is their questions are online platform or certification. So what do you what cert the question is, are there any online platforms or certification you'd recommend for learning about transformation in pharma? So here's what I can't see who this person is, but what I would say is, again, I would follow the same. This is Sundar. right? So I would follow the same process to say, look, if you go through the ZS example that I gave, if you do this certification, what are you hoping to change? Like, what will it actually have that success metric? And push yourself to say, well, if I did this, I spent this money and time, uh, what will change? If you're clear on that and you are clear on the answer, then it is worth. Otherwise, there is just confusing. It's no different from when I was looking at Simpler and Sprinkler and all these tools and trying to figure out which is the right tool. The question I asked is too, which is the right tool, but what was I really trying to change? So that's what I would say. How do you see blockchain contributing pharmaceutical supply chain transparency? So I will admit that I know about blockchain, but I will not go into a room like here and try and tell people about how blockchain functions. I mean, I don't know enough about blockchain, and that's something that I need to know. It just, of course, there is. I have friends who work in pharma, some of them from engineering as well, who work in pharma, and they're involved with supply chains and so the blockchain technology. So I will skip that question in many ways because. I just don't understand enough, and I have not worked on supply side of things and distribution side of things. So, but I can say that it is transforming. It is transforming. It is absolutely transforming, and some of these things. And it's just that I'm not the right person to provide more information other than saying it's being transformed. Any other question?
One question has come from Karunakar Singh. What are
Hmm.
the biggest problem statement and use case pharma industries needed?
So I'll take a stab. I don't understand the question really well, but uh, I think instead of looking at the other part, well, let me make a philosophical statement. We we get to, when I look at, and I'll answer your question in a bit. But when we try as humans, what we try and do, we take lots of big data, we lots of and say, tell me just three simplest things. Tell me the biggest statement or tell me the biggest problem, because we can only process and address those big problems. The part where I would submit is, with especially with AI, the ability to uh, individualize and personalize gives you much higher ability. So what I would say is that you can get into a lot of different things and you can give it the attention it deserves rather than focusing on the top three things. So what I would say is, uh, there are big things, but with AI, if you're able, and let's just say, well, you're looking at classic computing, and then when you get at quantum computing, you can solve a lot of different problems simultaneously and provide personalized solutions. So what I would say is, uh, if I had to now answer your question, what are the biggest problems? I would say moving up the chain so that you can now harness AI and harness some of these technologies to solve a lot of little problems within the pharma industry and say, look, your insight gathering process is completely redundant. You have 20 people meeting people in time and you're trying to project and saying what's happening. You don't even know what's happening on the social media side. Your drug development processes, you have all these PhDs and PharmDs and all these researchers, and they're spending time. It's a very redundant process. So you can get AI to do it. So I think the simple answer now, after this long, complicated thing, would be to say, well, from our point of view, we just need to figure out what technologies to use, how to move up the chain, and how to harness that so that we don't become redundant ourselves. And I'm not even talking about IT. I mean, think about all the coders. So the question is, if you're coding and AI can come and do all these codes, then how do you move up the chain? That's a real threat, right? How do you move up the chain? And otherwise, if you don't move up the chain, I say, well, sure, you code. I'll do higher level stuff. It is also true in countries. The countries like a lot of US and all that, they've sent out their manufacturing because they cannot compete with India and China and all these countries to manufacture at that level. So they've just moved up the case. Apple says, we're selling Apple iPhones at this level, but we'll do all the manufacturing in initially in China and now in India. So what they have done, that's a strategy. So it's the same strategy. How do I move up the chain and not compete? Or AI will definitely do a much better job soon than a person can do.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, and then lots of questions. Do you want me to just read the questions from the chat and just answer those?
I will read it for you,
Okay,
Ravi
sure,
sir.
sure, sure.
How can digital technology be utilized in marketing, selling, oncology supportive molecules in startup organization where fund flow is criteria? This is the question from Debashish Ghosh, B Pharma
Okay.
1990 to 94.
Okay, so I would say the first thing that you have to say is what I mean, digital transformation is a loosely used term. And so we're saying, okay, well, what is happening? Let's go back to the omni-channel model. So people, pharma has been notorious, especially in India, pharma has been notorious to be very people-centric. What is now changing is that now to communicate, you really don't need as many people. So to give an example, especially in US and North America, what is happening is that there used to be people who were known as medical information, and their job was that questions, scientific questions came in, they did all the research, they validated everything, and then they sent it out and they sent an answer and said about your product or about things. Now what is happening is with the AI and all that, and all these tools that are developing that can quickly look through tons and tons of information and summarize it and tell you in a conversant fashion. So what is now happening is a lot of companies are saying, well, do we really need all these people in medical information? Uh, when you can have fewer people, but you can build these AI tools. And right now you'll just supervise and say, this is what the AI tool said, and I'll supervise and get the correct answer and still out. You're still liable. So the part that I'm saying is the digital transformation in information exchange, which where people were playing a role, that will disappear. And therefore, what will happen is you may you will see more hybrid people. You will see more the role of and we are again talking about marketing alone. There are lots of different areas in a pharma industry, but you're looking at they will reduce, they will change. And so the question then is, how do you understand? How do you in the end, what did not change was the need to communicate scientifically, right? And you can personalize, you can have a next best action, you can see where they have been, you can see what was told to them, you can see which conferences were there, you can see which ads they clicked, you can put all these together, and then you can provide a next best action. So the question then is, people will solve problems, they'll move up, but you can't have technology solve all the problems. So they'll solve problems, and that's where it'll transform.
Uh, Ravi sir, last question we will take up, and that's a interesting question coming from Sundar Saurav. He wants to know about your journey with us, if you are comfortable. He says that he has come to know something amazing things about you. I do not know.
So I'll very quickly tell, and uh, let me summarize it in such a way that I think the my journey, it's a little bit unique in the sense that after pharmacy I worked in India and I was a product manager and all that, and then I was more on the pharma side. I really didn't know any of my. I wasn't. Some friends, close friends from 88 engineering I had, and I didn't keep in touch as much. Other than then, when I came to Canada, and the one thing happens is you literally wipe your slate clean. And my parents had moved to US, and I hadn't moved with them, for whatever reason. We stayed back, which is very unusual. And so they harassed us. And so I moved to Canada. And now I'm in US. So when I came to Canada, you wipe your slate clean. Literally, you know what? I mean, all the things that I'd done in product management and the brand which had grown 500%, you wipe it clean. Around that time, just in the context of this talk, around that time, a group called Yahoo Groups was coming. So somebody created a Yahoo Groups, and we were discussing things over emails. Yahoo Groups then became, then WhatsApp and all these came in. Suddenly, the whole thing transformed. Suddenly, one by one, somebody sent me an invite and said, "There's an 88 batch invite, and each of you will have your own badge. Each of you." It just completely changed. In that whole process, what happened was I got exposed. I started hanging out with people who were not they were my close friends, but I was hanging out with people who were not in my domain. And I started picking up things from some people working in Silicon Valley, some people from 88 batch running companies, and so I started picking up cross functional things. And I quickly realized that here are some problems that I have, which I'm grappling with. And I was working my way through. I joined AstraZeneca and working my way through, and doing things. And I realized, oh my gosh, I can use these technologies to solve these problems. So the part that I would say is that the two things that I'd say: be a continuous learner, and number two, get outside your area of comfort. Talk to other departments, other people, because you will see that they may have solutions that they have solved for, or they may be able to provide solutions to your problems. And by working collaboratively, you can just completely transform how people think about it. So part of my journey, and the last part was I came to US, and then I quit my job in AstraZeneca and I joined Biogen, trying to change as a strategic director, trying to change and seeing all these things that I've learned. The big lesson that I learned there is the people part. So there were three divisions: there was multiple sclerosis, there was neuropsychiatry, and there's Alzheimer's that was coming up, neuropsychiatry, and then these were the three divisions. Even though I worked and I could show that these things work, people just resisted. So one division took up the other division. That's why I said, look, I mean, this is a much more complicated thing. And my only thing would be that as you work through your career, you now have access. You can look at the LinkedIn profile and you see who are the people who like the post around this talk. Where are they? What do they do? Can we interact with them? So there's a lot that you can work and a lot of things that you can do. So part of my journey in the context of this talk is uh, I like to think of myself as a continuous learner. I in many areas, I push myself outside my area of comfort because I know that I can harness the very thing that I'm saying. I can harness AI to elevate myself so that AI doesn't take my job.
That's great, Ravish. Ravish sir, one question let us take, because it is
Mm,
from a young pharmaceutical student of 2K23 batch, Ronit.
mm,
He wished to
mm.
know what knowledge do pharmaceutical company look for in a new pharma recruit.
Okay, so I'll talk about a little bit more about from a US perspective. It is a little bit how I would hire. I've been out of India for a very long time, so I would defer to some of my friends who were in the same uh, area uh, on how they hire. But one thing that I look is basically for anybody that I would hire is to say you have to be like a sponge. You see, and I am very, very rigid in saying, well, if you are a pharmacist or you are, I hire pharmacists or I hire pharma people, so I can't speak for IT side. I assume that you have to know your stuff, right? You did a course, you have to know, or you can bring that. I assume. But then I look for adaptability and say, are you like a sponge? Can you gather all the information? Can you keep learning and keep assimilating beyond your area of comfort? Because if a person, and the attitude, right, and that attitude to continuous learning, because you can teach everything to people, but I find it hard to change the attitude. And if you can't change the attitude, then they will not learn continuously. They will not be able to transform. I will not be able to develop them. So that is the part that I look. To me, the attitude and the ability to be agile is the single most important thing. But where, that slide that I was showing, where I'm very rigid, is to say, look, you are supposed to be a domain expert in this. You better be a domain expert. So if I have to now try and explain to you how this drug works and you can't read it on your own, then I have a different problem. So that is the basic. But then attitude and the ability to continuously learn and be agile is my perspective. Different people may have different perspectives.
Perfectly. And I hope that this particular set of qualities hold good not only for pharmaceuticals but for any job. Means
Yeah.
student need to understand that when a company is expecting output from you, they pay for that and they expect at least 10 time return, at least 10 time. So definitely learning is the key aspect for everybody, and that is what we need. uh, Atmesh, if you are around and if you would like to have some closing remarks on this, because now it is 9:24. So please, you are mute. You are mute,
You're on mute.
Atmesh.
Uh,
Again,
Not
it is
much to
mute. Yeah.
say, but I hope everyone can hear me now, right?
Yeah.
Yes,
Right.
yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So not much to say. Big thanks to Ravi sir for giving this a very illuminating talk and then engaging with new students, young and old alike. A lot of experience, rich experience in this area. I will I will only say that we will have another speaker. I do know who that person would be, but we will confirm it in a bit. Okay. And hopefully Vishal and I could work out some schedule before the
Uh,
semester ends, etc.
Atmesh, Professor Ramitra Pal is in Ranchi and he has agreed. So I will. You can have a word with him.
Oh, okay. He told me that he would do the talk in October, fall semester,
Okay,
like
okay,
in
okay.
the email. I mean, like when I was looking for
No problem. We'll take this
time.
offline. We will discuss this
Yes,
offline. Yeah,
yeah.
we'll discuss. Yeah.
But yeah, but again, thank you so much, Ravi sir, and I think Anjan sir is also here. Anjan sir, you want to say something? I don't know if he's on mute or he shows up on the chat. Other than that, Shraddha madam,
Uh, no, I think she was around, but she must have left out.
okay, all
It
right,
was a busy. Yeah. So
all
thank
right.
you, Professor Atnesh, Ravish sir, because it was really wonderful insight, and we are really thankful for all the efforts. It was one of the, in terms of number of attendees, this was a good show. We have around 70 participants participated in this particular event today, and it's a good by any number, because when it is a diverse topic, we don't expect everybody to join, but I am sure that those who joined have learned something. And recording is also available, so with a few filters, I will see if it can be posted somewhere after permission from Ravish sir and Bitma North America for a wider audience. I'm
Yeah,
thankful to you,
that's
sir. Thank you. Thank you.
well, thank you. And,
Yeah.
like I said, many of us have very fond feelings for BIT. It's amazing how 4 years or few years can change. So hopefully this is not just a one-off thing. I mean, if you have one-off, reach out to me on LinkedIn or otherwise, I mean, networking and all these other things. And as you're navigating, I'd be happy to. We are committed, and Atmesh and Anjan sir, and we are all part of a very committed group that we it's more than just speak. So happy to chat and work beyond this as well.
Sir, director from Jaipur campus, Dr. Piyush Tiwari, wish to say something. Piyush sir,
Yeah.
please go ahead. Not to take the permission, sir. You are very respectable. Please, sir. Piyush sir.
Uh, I joined about half an hour late, so for that I'm really sorry. But I was really looking forward to this talk because it is not from a person just from pharma, but it reminded me of my old days at IIT Roorkee when I was interacting with the biotech department there, working with one of the research scholar. Now he is a big Ashok Pawar has become a name in India. So what I have been observing for last about an hour or so, that two lines that came from his talk is very, very, very important, not only for the current students, teachers and all. First thing is be a continuous learner and go outside your domain. So continuous learner, many people do, but going the outside domain is most people try to avoid, or they just think that it is not really good for them. So thank you for giving these two lines and
Thank you.
for let people know that these are two small lines can change their careers. Thank you.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Piyush sir. Thank
Thank
you
you.
for your
Great.
remarks.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks a lot for staying with us. And